everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Art in the Wild. My name is Martin Culpepper, and I'm starting a podcast. Now, I've been in the process of making this for a really long time, but between, literally months, but between, planning and figuring out exactly what I wanted to do, and primarily an unholy amount of procrastination, it kind of took me a while to actually get this first episode out, but here we are. Now, there's two primary objectives that I want to execute with this first episode. The first one is I want to talk about what's behind me, like why I'm making this show, what my plans are for it in the future. And then the second part is I want to talk about myself a little bit because on my Instagram, I'll only, if you're watching this, I'm assuming you're coming through my social media or my Instagram. But yeah, on my social media, I won't really talk about myself. I'll just kind of post a shot. I'll talk in depth about the experience if it was a cool experience, and that's kind of it. So yeah, those are the things I want to cover with this. But starting out with why I'm making it. If you've been following me on social media, for particularly Instagram, for a good amount of time, there's a decent chance what the Young Wildlife Photographers Photo Chat is, and that was a podcast type thing that I ran with another talented young wildlife photographer named Alex Isengart. And on there, it was a lot of fun. I had a blast. It was really cool. But the problem is I just turned 20 recently, and I've kind of aged out of that young wildlife photographers group. So you can't really do that anymore. But the problem is I still like getting on a call with someone who's passionate about wildlife and wildlife photography and talking about those topics. So that's kind of one of the main reasons why I'm making this for myself. Now the topics I want to cover with this and the episode types I want to have, first off, I want to do like the really generic, having an interview with another wildlife photographer about their artistic process. Like I know you see that in pretty much every single wildlife oriented thing, or even just photography oriented podcast or show in general, but it is something I want to do. But I also want to have people on to talk about just wildlife specifically, because I feel like in wildlife photography, just in a general discussion, it's really easy to focus on the artistic side and the technical side, and it can kind of get easy to just refer to the animals entirely as subjects and, just not talk about them at all, which is something I kind of want to avoid doing. So I want to have episodes that are like, oh, let's talk about freaking, I don't know, hermit thrushes or something, and have someone on who works with that species to talk about them. So that's another big thing I want to focus on. I want to have like philosophical topics, primarily ethics is the one that comes to mind with this, and ethics is a really expansive, complicated topic that really needs to be explored in a lot of depth, and I find that in a lot of ethical discussion, it's really heated, more than it really should be, and it's just kind of people putting out their really opinionated stances. It's often really judgy, and that's things I want to avoid, so I want to have episodes like dedicated to a certain topic that are approached from more of kind of an objective standpoint and talking about a certain topic within ethics. So for example, having an episode or even maybe multiple episodes on playback and the effects of playback on certain animals, talking about flash photography with diurnal animals versus nocturnal animals in certain situations, talking about bird feeders, talking about baiting. Did I already say baiting? I don't remember. But a bunch of different stuff, right? So that's kind of what I have planned for that. I also want to talk about like the subjective quality of art, and then some other like random topics. Like one that came up in a group chat I was in recently was AI art and how AI art will affect art in general, but also wildlife photography specifically. I also want to do vlogs. I did those in the Young Wildlife Photographers Photo Chat. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, I've got a bunch of different ideas. Those are some things you will most likely definitely see out of this. There might be some more things in the future. But yeah, so I did say this is going to be a short episode. That's pretty much already the first part of it over. Second part is I want to talk about myself. So hi, my name is Martin Culpepper. As I said, I'm a 20-year-old wildlife photographer based in New England, and I've been doing wildlife photography for like 8 years now. I don't know exactly how long, because I don't remember. It's kind of hard to pin down exactly when I started, but I've been doing it for a while. And even before wildlife photography, though, wildlife has always been my main passion. Ever since, like, before I have memories, my parents have all these, would tell me all these stories of like how I used to carry animal encyclopedias over my shoulders wherever I went when I was like 2, and I would watch all the animal documentaries and things like that. So wildlife has always been my primary passion in life. It's just kind of photography gave me a way to channel that into an artistic medium. Now, the thing that kind of started the photography for me was when I was like 11 or 12, I was on a boat off the coast of Gloucester, Massachusetts, and we were coming back to shore, and we ran into this huge pod of Atlantic white-sided dolphins, and there might have been a couple whales in there too, but I was like young, and I just remember looking around. This is my first encounter with dolphins in the wild, I'm pretty sure, and just seeing dolphins like as far as the eye could see, like hundreds of them. Now, once again, I was young. My brain could have been exaggerating, but there was like tons of dolphins everywhere. And I had my iPhone 6. I was running around taking videos of them, and I was just like super excited, and I was freaking out. And then at one point in the video, this group of dolphins, maybe 5 or so, rose right next to the boat, and then kind of went down. I'm talking like 30 feet off the boat tops. And then later that night, I was looking through that video frame by frame, and one at the point where the dolphins rose next to the boat, one of them rose up, and there was a calf or a baby right next to it. So I screenshotted that part of the video, and I remember looking at this thing and being like, wow, because all of my experience up until that point with wildlife photos and wildlife videos and things like that were, out of like a David Attenborough documentary or a National Geographic magazine or something along those lines. So having an experience that I saw and then subsequently was able to capture myself and look at was like really impactful for me. So yeah, that was kind of the start of it. I started going out, taking pictures of plants in my backyard, tried to take pictures of birds when I could, but the chance obviously didn't really present itself with an iPhone that much. But one day, I was going to go out to a nature area with my mom. I think I was like definitely 12 at this point, and she had this old Nikon D200. She's a photographer as well, but she had this old Nikon D200 just sitting on a shelf, and I'm looking at that thing, and I was like, that'd probably take better pictures than my phone, right? And I walk up to it, I'm kind of examining it. There's like all these dials and buttons and screens and stuff, and I was really intimidated, but I decided like, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna bring it out and see what happens. So I asked her if I could bring it out. She said yeah. She was excited because she's a photographer, so she was excited that I was getting into it. And then kind of like the instant I walked out the door that day, my whole life changed, because I went to an area to look for animals. We found some deer, and I was like hooked instantly. I got some pictures of these deer. They were super blurry and not great, but I was like super proud of them. So I was like showing all my friends at school. I was like 7th or 8th grade at this point, and I was showing them all these pictures of these deer. I'm like, look at these shots I got. And I started getting pictures like blurry tree swallows in flight. And I didn't actually know how to download the image. So what I would do is I'd take the shot, turn on the camera so you could see the LCD screen, and then take a photo off the back of the LCD screen. And that was my primary way of sharing it with my friends. And then one of the shots I was most proud of, I remember, was this red-tailed hawk and this Cooper's hawk kind of circling each other. So that's kind of how it all started. And then over the years, I started to, slowly upgrade. I went from a Nikon D200, I got a D5100 like a year later with a Tamron 300 millimeter, and then I got a Sigma 150 to 500, I think like a year after that maybe, and then I got a Sigma 150 to 600 and a D500 a little bit later, and that's the setup I've shot the most until actually like maybe 2 months ago. I just upgraded to a Nikon mirrorless setup with a 500 PF, but there was like a 5-year period of me, improving my gear and starting to get better encounters, starting to get really cool encounters with owls and bears and things of that nature. But one day, maybe like 2.5 years ago, something like that, I got added to this group chat of other young wildlife photographers out of nowhere on Instagram. And, walking out the door with the camera was like the first life-changing event. And then this was kind of the second one, because up until that point, like, yes, it was always how do I say this? I always took it seriously. Like, it was always the biggest part of my life, but I wasn't putting a lot of thought into my images. I was just going out, snapping shots of animals, done. You know what I'm saying? When I got added to this group chat of younger wildlife photographers, they had a lot more sophisticated methods to actually produce the image, and were a lot more thoughtful about the quality of their images. So I kind of went from, like going out and just taking snapshots of wildlife to all of a sudden being introduced to all these concepts like, actually, using good light, composition, perspective, things like that. So it was kind of like, it made me realize how expansive the whole field was, and it was a little rough getting adjusted to, but once I started to learn that, I started to enjoy it more, right? So over the last 2.5 years is when I've actually been really improving my work, and I'm still improving every day, but it's gotten to the point where I am now. And yeah, so that's kind of the story of how I got here. And now I take it even a lot more seriously than I did when I was younger. And end goal would be to become a professional wildlife photographer. But yeah, so that's kind of my story with it and wildlife and everything like that. And you'll start to learn more about me as the episodes kind of go on. I'll talk more about myself in certain areas. But yeah, so man, shots have been slow. I don't know. It's like spring's coming back, so I'm really excited for that. I just shot some red-winged blackbirds the other day. I didn't get any great shots, but it was really cool. This whole winter though, it's just been, I think I got like 4 shots I liked, maybe. One was a pine grosbeak. I got a white-breasted nuthatch I kind of liked. I got a white-throated sparrow recently that was decent. Yeah, I mean it's been a great winter for sightings. One of my best actually. I got this whole fall, I actually did get some good shots in the fall of eastern coyotes, and then those sightings extended into the winter, and I think I got some okay shots of them in the winter too. I saw 2 wolves in northern Minnesota. I might tell that story on the podcast someday. That was a crazy story. But I got those guys. I actually got one semi-decent shot of one. I saw a bobcat, which was really cool. I saw her a couple times. It was the same one I saw last winter, and I got really good shots of her and her kitten last winter, but this year I didn't really get any awesome shots of her, but it was still cool to see her. What else? I saw a couple foxes at night, things like that. So it's been a really good winter for sightings, but shots have been really slow. So I'm just excited for shorebirds to come back. I'm excited for spring migration. I'm excited for, maybe fox and coyote dens. That's going to be pretty cool. But yeah, so I don't really have a fancy outro saying or anything yet. But yeah, so for the next episode, I'm going to have someone on to do an interview. This was just kind of an introductory episode. I don't know who I'm going to have on yet exactly. I have a couple ideas, but I'll figure it out. But yeah, so I hope you guys have a good one. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys are excited. I'm excited as well. But yeah, I will see you on the next one.